You know, you guys, it really seemed that as we slowly got closer and closer to the 2023 postseason, while I'm by no means trying to imply that people were starting to somehow forget about the Philadelphia Eagles, but at the very least, there were definitely some people out there that started to disregard them. Because no matter where you look in terms of challenges that this team had to encounter, such as the recent shoulder injury to their quarterback in Jalen Hurts, their quote-unquote end-of-the-year slump that some people like to call it, or even the fact that Hurts said himself that he is nowhere near 100% heading into the postseason, it all just left some people questioning what version of this Eagles team we'd actually see. But well, after witnessing what you could arguably consider one of the most dominant playoff victories in NFL history, it didn't only show us that Philadelphia might be playing their best football of the entire year, but it's specifically how they're doing it that is leaving their opponents nothing short of clueless on how to actually stop it, so let's get into it. One sec though guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like the video if you do enjoy, subscribe, and turn on those notifications to never miss another NFL video. But before we go any further, today's video is brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. Now I'm sure you guys are as hyped as I am, because not only are the NFL playoffs finally here, but our partners at DraftKings are also looking to set you guys up with a win of your own. Because all any new customers have to do is sign up at DraftKings using the promo code DIGEST. That's just $5 on any NFL playoff game, and you will instantly receive $200 in free bonus bets. And with these, you can get even further in on the action with some of DraftKings same-game parlays, where you can combine multiple bets like who will win, by how much, and more for a shot at even bigger winnings. And if mobile sports betting isn't available in your state yet, don't worry, because you can still get in on the action with the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. So be sure to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. New customers use promo code DIGEST and bet $5 on any NFL playoff game to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. So once again, that's promo code DIGEST only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, to get back on topic with the Philadelphia Eagles, it shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone that after acquiring their new top offensive target in A.J. Brown this offseason, along with the rise to MVP caliber play and recognition out of their quarterback in Jalen Hurts, and of course with coasting into the 2023 playoffs with the hands-down best record across the entire league, that Philly rather convincingly showcased one of the best offenses in all of football this year. And no matter which aspect of this historically dominant dual-threat offense you think deserves the most credit for their success seen, I'd like to say it's rather obvious that the catalyst for the leap seen this year are due in large part to the immensely improved air attack. And while even from a numbers perspective, it will still clearly tell you that this was the biggest strength added to this team, some were also convinced that it would end up being the main cause of this team's downfall, again due to the uncertain and potentially limited capabilities we'd see out of Jalen Hurts regarding his injury in playoff action. But I can also confidently say that even with Hurts not being quote-unquote 100% in his postseason play, that all of the raw improvements we saw Jalen Hurts make as a true quarterback this season were also showcased to some capacity on the biggest stage. Because I mean, whether you want to talk about his improved ability to accurately hit his targets in all three levels of the field, his rapidly improved pocket awareness and sense of avoiding pressure, which might have been the biggest stride he's taken of them all, or even just seeming to make the right read in almost any situation that he was thrown into. It's just that if you haven't watched the Eagles really at all this year, it probably became obvious rather quickly as to why this team has only lost once this entire year when this guy goes start to finish. But for those of you that have watched this team all year, you probably know that despite this team putting up a ridiculous 38 points and even the methodical play of Jalen Hurts, that this side of the ball was somehow still not playing to their full potential. And I say this because even though Jalen Hurts' performance in the postseason so far was impressive to say the very least, you could actually make the case that from all areas of his game, he was used to a lesser degree than he really had been at any point prior in the season. And believe me, it's not like it was just low compared to the standards that Jalen Hurts has created for himself throughout the regular season, but in fact, his usage was historically low compared to all other quarterbacks in the history of the playoffs. And that's when you're talking about a top 3 MVP candidate who is undoubtedly one of the biggest reasons as to why you are where you're at right now. now sounds ridiculous to even say out loud, especially with the results that we're seeing. But that's the thing about this team, because while the on-field production of Jalen Hurts will more than likely be valued above all else in most situations, you also definitely can't go wrong with mentioning how valuable his presence on the field alone is. And in fact, as crazy as it sounds to say, it might just be the most valuable asset to both head coach Nick Siranni and offensive coordinator Shane Steichen. And as I'm sure some of you are wondering what I mean by this, in order to give the correct answer, we're going to have to shift this conversation over into Philadelphia's ground game. And even though, while statistically speaking at least, the numbers in this regard, both total and efficiency-wise, were slightly down this season compared to last, I think that most of you would agree with me when I say that this aspect of the ball for them is more contributing and unpredictable than it's felt really in years. And of course, if the massacre on the ground so far we've seen in the postseason from them isn't quite enough to convince you of thinking that way yet, the utilization and formation scheming they use in this regard definitely should do the trick for you. Because, I mean, aside from having a running back room as deep as Philly's with guys like Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and of course Jalen Hurts at their disposal as well, it's not necessarily just another aspect of this offense, which is how most people see it, but instead, it is the literal reason as to why the floodgates have opened on this side of the ball from really any angle possible. And if you haven't guessed yet, I say this on account of the three simple letters RPO. Now, the RPO offense is something that has been slowly implemented into almost every team across the league at this point, at least to some extent, but I feel more confident than ever before in saying you won't find another team across the league that runs this more often and more effectively than Nick Siranni and Jalen Hurts. Because, well, if it's not easy enough to continuously force-feed the ground game against opposing defenses that simply lack the ability to stop it, which of course, as we all saw on national television, the New York Giants being the clear-cut and dry example of this, their scheming and ability to fake out their opponents has also in turn made Jalen's job that much easier by opening up his air reads and constantly having the secondaries crash. Which, to make it even simpler, it's an offense that allows the big names on this team to go out and make the big plays themselves, rather than always needing to rely on god-tier quarterbacking to move the ball and get the job done. And I mean, sure, from what we saw out of Jalen Hurts this year, we definitely know that he is more than capable of living up to that god-tier quarterbacking that we just mentioned from time to time. But to have your team perform as dominant as they did, with your best player doing as little as he did while being extremely efficient in the process, is honestly one of the best results I could have expected if I were an Eagles fan. But of course, while it seems almost impossible to try to follow up the excellence we've seen on this side of the ball, there's also this team's extremely underrated defensive presence, which, as can be seen from their yearly averages, has been nothing short of phenomenal for the most part across the board. But if there's anything that's put this side of the ball in a tier of their own, it has undoubtedly been their ability to absolutely lock down opposing quarterbacks, both from a frontline pressure and a defensive coverage standpoint. And I mean, sure, while the run prevention would be an area of concern, if any, regarding this team's success going forward, it's also an area that should not be considered below average by any stretch of the imagination. Because with a box loaded in guys like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, and even Hassan Riddick doing everything they can to lock up the front, and also being able to lean back on one of the best secondaries in the game today, while definitely being overlooked at times, their impact will end up being one of the biggest reasons we see this Philly team make it any further than they currently are. But will it end up all being enough? Well, as always, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Nonetheless though, you guys, with everything we've seen and mentioned so far regarding the Philadelphia Eagles, I am of course extremely curious to hear what you have to think about their situation. So please be sure to let me know in the comments what has been the most surprising part to you from everything we've seen out of Philly in the postseason, and also where do you think this team needs to improve the most to keep their postseason run alive. But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.